York. The following is a WTC production.
Citizens of America, people of the Florida Alliance, and the Western forces of Texas and California will be welcomed back to these United States as soon as their illegal secessionist government is deposed.
You don't know what side they're fighting for.
Someone's trying to kill us. We are trying to kill them.
Ex Machina's director Alex Garland shows the annihilation of the United States in a gritty and realistic take on a second American Civil War. In the film, Mary Jane Watson takes up the mantle of Peter Parker as war journalist Lee. She is joined by discount Pedro Pascal, Wagner Moura, and aspiring war journalist Jesse, played by Kaylee Spaney. Together, our band of journalists trek through the war-torn East Coast in an effort to get one last interview with the president before the fall of D.C. So, Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo. What were your thoughts on the movie? I don't really know how well it's doing box office wise. There weren't that many people in the theater when we saw it. I don't know if you've heard anything about.
Well, just we were talking about that. It made around, was it 45 million or so, or a little less than 45 million?
Okay.
And so far as of the recording of this podcast, and that that's after maybe a couple weeks of theater time. But I honestly don't know how many theaters it's been in either, so that could be a part of it. It also could be that a lot of people just are unsure of what it's really about, and I think the subject matter can naturally be a little bit scary for some people.
Yeah, well, and when you think about a lot of movies like your Marvels and your Transformers, your big popcorn flicks, I mean, those get a lot of money in repeat viewing, and so this is a movie that's I definitely think it's an important film for a lot of people to see, especially if you're here in the United States. I definitely think it's important to see. It's also not one that I'm necessarily like excited to see a second time, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more in the review, because I do think it's really good and I think it's worth seeing, but it's not like the most happy-go-lucky film ever. So
yeah, so just to kind of jump into it and kind of let you know what we thought of it, right? If you haven't seen it, you might be thinking, well, I don't know, I've watched a couple things here and there, and some people seem to really like it, other people don't seem interested in it at all. Some people didn't like the direction that it took. I think from the stuff that I've read out there and the social media world, there's a lot of opinions. What I would say overall is that I really did like the film.
Yeah.
I thought it was extremely well done. If you like indie style films that are a little bit less conventional, not, big budget box office, hits kind of films, but just really great direction, really great storytelling, really great acting, I think this film had all of that.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, it's a beautiful film. There are some shots in it that, and I mean, the film, it's written and directed by Alex Garland, so it's a writer-director combo, and that's not really something you see a lot of in Hollywood anymore. I mean, it's always like film, written by like 27 different people. and you've got your 12 directors and producers and stuff attached to it. So it definitely does seem like it has a little bit more of a cohesive overall vision, which is nice. It is a really beautiful film to watch. Just, I don't know if we're going to get into it at any point, but the audio in the film, not necessarily like the music and the scoring, but just the audio is actually pretty shocking, especially when you get into some of the gunfights. I think they do a really good job of limiting the amount of music and really letting the gunshots and the firefights, I mean, that's the only audio that you have in those moments, and it's really impactful. But the audio is just like, ooh, on point.
And that was one of the things, that I think when we got out of the film and we were standing in the parking lot talking about our initial impressions, that was the one thing I noticed, is that it does have a pretty good musical score, but you don't really hear that music a lot. So unlike, some of your big box office blockbuster kind of things, you think of Star Wars or, the Marvel films or Transformers, where there's a lot of music always punching and trying to drive emotion in the background. Most of this film is really silent. And there are times when this musical score comes in that I think is always extremely appropriate. And then beyond that, the thing that I found a little weird was that they used more songs. I don't know if they were big songs, like, big things that had been around before. I didn't really recognize any of the music. But sometimes I think what they were doing, this is my take, I don't know, I've not read this, but that they used that music because it was a little bit more lighthearted and bubblegum-like. And it felt like it was meant to lighten the mood, at those times.
Yeah.
But I just, it's to me, it felt a little awkward at times. So that would be probably my one main criticism, was the use of the musical songs.
Let's make some noise. That's a good choice.
Another thing I think we should kind of address up front is what this movie is not. Because I do think that was one of the things for me. I mean, I watched the trailers going in ahead of time, and I normally do for most movies. I want to know ahead of time, like, kind of, like, is this something that's going to be of interest to me?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily to the film's fault, but the movie is really a road trip movie and not a war movie in a conventional sense. Like, it's not Saving Private Ryan or Black Hawk Down. It's more like The Last of Us but on HBO, where you have this group of characters trying to get from point A to point Z and all the different things that they hit along the way.
No, you're right about that. And that was, again, I think one of the criticisms that some people have leveled at it is that the trailers kind of portray it as being this action film, and all that stuff that you see in the trailers is in the movie.
Yeah.
But that's not the main gist of the movie. It really is a character drama, and it's set in a world where the Civil War is raging in the United States. And it's about how the people, our characters in the story, navigate through all of that.
Yeah.
So.
And I do think, I do think that both helps and hinders the movie, in that, one, it doesn't really take any political sides. there's some people out there, you'll see reviews or, Twitter comments where it's like, yeah, oh, this movie's so woke, or oh, this movie is, just like MAGA Boy, whatever.
Yeah.
Can't think of the name of those groups at the moment, but it's just, pandering to one of those sides. It's like, I don't really think it did. I feel like it walked that line pretty well, as best as it could for a film from Hollywood.
Yeah.
But I also feel one of my biggest complaints of the movie is I wish I knew more about the history and kind of the reasons leading up to it. And this isn't really a spoiler for the movie. It's kind of, I would say, addressed pretty quickly. The film starts kind of on the tail end of the Civil War, so it's already been going for a while. There's no real explanation given as to why it happened, and I do think if they went that route of saying, it was because gun rights were taken away, or it was because Roe v. Wade was taken away, it would be one of those things that is so immediately, would cause people to throw up their shields and be like, oh, so you're saying that, yeah. It would I think it would have caused probably more social problems, when really the message of the movie is, don't dehumanize your fellow, man. So it had a hard line to walk. I will give it that, and it does leave me wanting more. So
yeah, and I do think that I felt the same way, because in any story, I always want to know the backstory. I want to understand really how did they get to this place, because for me that's gonna help explain some of the actions that happen along the way. Like, oh, I perfectly understand why so and so said or did that because of X, Y, and Z. And not having that information, you're left to try to figure out, well, was that a good response or a bad response? Was that, did they kind of overplay that response? Is that not a natural response? Anyways, it just leads to too many questions because I don't understand how they got there. But I do think that your point about not explaining what was the catalyst, I think was critical, because then the catalyst would have become the point of the film. Mm-hmm. So if, as you had kind of thrown out there, it had been the abortion issue, then that's all people would have seen it as, is like, well, the reason why we got to have abortion's rights is so we don't have a civil war, or the reason why we need to outlaw abortion is so we don't have a civil war. Whatever it would have been that was the whole point. That would have been everybody's takeaway. But the point of the movie was so much different than that. It was really trying to deal with, I think, what came out in one of Kirsten Dunst's main lines in the film, and she's a fairly quiet character. Like she talks a bit through it, but there's a lot of introspective stuff that she does. I think she acts this role really well. But at one point in the film, and this is in the trailer, so I'm not giving anything away either. She says, "Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are." And so I really feel like the main thought of the film was, let's learn from past mistakes. Let's learn from our past mistakes. Let's learn from others' past mistakes. And let's not keep repeating history.
I was just going to say, it's that classic line, those who fail to learn history are doomed to repeat it, or something to that effect.
Exactly. And so the point is that what Devin had said earlier about the dehumanization, when we look at people who are different than us, whether they look physically different, whether they talk different, whether they think different. When we look at them and say that somehow they're less of a person because they don't think, look, and talk like me, we've started down a path that leads to really heinous crimes against humanity. Mm-hmm. And we saw that in World War II. That's why we were able to exterminate 6 million people, because we, and I say we because we as a people,
speaking from humanity,
yeah,
the standpoint of humanity,
from the standpoint of humanity was okay with that. I mean, obviously not all of humanity was, but a segment of it was. I mean, Hitler gets a really bad rap for, what he did to the Jews, but I don't know how many Jews he personally killed.
Yeah.
I mean, he got other people to do it, and all those other people went along with it because they believed his message of dehumanization, that these people really weren't worthy of life because, I don't know, because they had done something wrong, or they had walked differently, or they had made more money than somebody else, or whatever the issue was. And so really, I feel like one of the overarching messages of the film was, don't do this. Don't treat people with less respect and dignity than they deserve as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking about it too. Kind of jumping ahead to the end of the movie. And again, no spoilers here. I mean, maybe kind of a little bit, but I feel like the end of the movie ends on a very not satisfying note. And initially I was like, well, that's maybe not, I say it's not satisfying, and it's not satisfying because it's not conventional how it ends. But I also think in a lot of ways, as I've thought about it more, it makes more sense in the context of the overall movie. When the war ends, when the final battle has been fought and won, all there is left are broken people to pick up broken things, and that's not very satisfying, so it's no spoilers for the end of the movie if you haven't seen it already, but it does end on kind of like a little bit of a downer, but it's like, oh, but that is how that would be in real life. It would be very, okay, like, this is just what this is, and then just time to kind of pick yourself up, a little bit. So that's, as I've thought about it more, I guess I've come to terms with it a little bit more. Because when we first saw it, I was I was a little bummed out. Was a little, okay, yeah, maybe you could have done something different. Maybe you could have, approached it a little bit differently, but it's kind of grown on me a little bit.
Well, it's kind of the reality of, the first Civil War. When it was all over and the North defeated the South and hostilities came to an end, it wasn't like either side really won.
Yeah.
There was death and carnage and families and societies that had been wreaked havoc over. And they had to live with the consequences of that war, and it wasn't like every other war we've ever been a part of, where, hey, we all get to go home now. No, this was home, and the mass graves and things like that are in the backyard. The destroyed cities are our destroyed cities. So I don't know how you end that on an upbeat note.
Yeah.
It's like it's just kind of the consequence of the story. But that's where I feel like the message was so powerful, that learn from the reality that if you can't get past your differences with somebody, you're going to get to a point where you're going to justify carnage. You're going to justify dehumanizing them. And you're going to justify their extermination. So if you find yourself extremely angry at somebody today, a particular group, a segment of the society that you just don't like, whether it be political in nature, whether it be religious in nature, whatever it is, if you've got a hang up with somebody in your society to where you feel like the best thing that could happen to the country is for those people to be done away with, you're starting down a path that will lead you to committing heinous crimes against people. And this movie is saying,
be careful. Don't do that.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
Yeah.
Because once you go down this road, there's no going back. So it was a powerful message in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're sitting here and, you know, talking about it, and you're probably sitting here watching it being like, oh, okay, I'm not going to go see this movie. But it is definitely a, yeah, I mean, we're talking about it, and it seems like it's just kind of like a very like dour movie, and it is, but I do think it is an important film for people to see. And I mean, we've talked about it. I think it'd probably be a good movie for them to play in high school and college, definitely.
Yeah.
Places where, I mean, it will be that generation that fights this war if it happens. And so, you know, are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Like, if you keep going down the road that you're on right now, are you ready for that? And hopefully, for the sake of all of us, the answer is no, and we turn away from it. But
so I do think about the writer, you know, and director. What he was probably thinking is that he was sending, just like that line from the movie, that he was sending a warning home. He was sending a warning to all of us. And so that's why while it's a difficult film to watch at times, I would say extremely difficult to watch at times, I would highly recommend you see it. I would highly recommend that if you have teenagers, that you have them watch it. There's some inappropriate language in it, but I just think that it's critical that people understand the end result of you know, division. And so I think it was important, and it's an important film.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess any final thoughts before we maybe give it like a rating or anything?
Yeah, I would think that the other point that I feel like is a really key point in the film was that it, to me, being from an older generation, I remember when journalism was much different than it is today. I feel like that, you know, when you watch the news today or you read stories today, there's so much commentary going on. But back when I was young, back in the 70s and 80s, journalism was really about reporting the facts, reporting the story. And the journalist didn't take you to any conclusions. That was left for you to figure out. We're just going to tell you what happened. We're going to show you the pictures. We're going to show you the video. And you have to decide, was this good, bad, or, you know, was it indifferent? And this film really was like an ode to, you know, old school journalists, especially when I think about like in the characters within the story. Two of them are photojournalists. And there's times when things are happening in the story, and you can tell in their eyes that they have a definite opinion on what they're seeing. Like, they have a personal opinion that it's not good, what they're seeing. But they don't interject themselves into the story. They just capture the moment so that they can tell the story. And that's really what old school journalism was. and we've missed that today. If you were born after 2000, you don't really understand what it was like to be just given raw data, and then you have to filter that through your personal lens and determine what you think about that. Today,
Everything's got its angle. Yeah.
yeah, you've got media outlets that are just like telling you what to think about something, and they may not even present you with the facts anymore. They present you with their emotions based on facts that they're not telling you. So you're left only with their emotions, and I don't really know what happened. I just know how it made you really angry, and I should be angry too, and we should all be angry. And it's like, but what are we angry about?
Which causes division.
Yeah, which causes division.
So maybe the real message of the movie is the media should just go back to just still photography. No more no more video, no more extreme biases. Just go old school.
Yeah.
Polaroid it.
There's something to be said. So, you know what, if you have seen the movie, it'd be great to hear what you guys think and what your takeaways were. Again, good or bad, it's like I said in our introduction video. These are our opinions. This is who we are, and this is where we're at in our journey. You might be in a different place, and you might have a different opinion, and we'd love to hear what your opinion is. And that's, I think, what makes our country great. A lot of people say, oh, is America really a great country? And if so, why is it great? Well, what makes it great is that we live in a place where we can actually have free thought, and we can share that free thought with others. Now, I don't have to buy it just because you're selling it, but I can listen to it, and I can filter it, and I can evaluate it. And I would hope that you're doing the same thing. And in the process, we're kind of learning and growing together in this life and becoming, more intelligent, stronger people. And at the same time, being willing to communicate and kind of share in more intimate ways with each other. So we would really like to hear what you have to say. Leave us some comments, send us some messages, and it would be great to get your take as well.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the movie, then go see it. Take your family, take your kids, teenagers. I wouldn't take anybody under teenage, probably maybe 13, 14 years old. Just depends on their development and like what they've been exposed to already. But take as many people as you can. Take your coworkers, go see it, and then share with us what you thought. And do you see the points that we made about the the old school journalism and the issue of not repeating the bad aspects of history and avoiding anything that would lead us down a path of division and hatred and anger towards one another. Do you see those things, or did you see something different? So anyways, I would really encourage you to do that. But you said something about rating the film. Yeah. So what would you give it as a rating?
Overall, it would be somewhere between like a 7 and an 8 out of 10, maybe a 7.5 out of 10. And the only docs I'm giving it, there are, without going into spoilers, there are some plot contrivances, I feel like, at the end of the film. And even just with we don't know how the Civil War started, I dock it some points for that. And there's a couple things at the end where they don't detract from the overall movie like a ton. It doesn't like derail it, but it does when the more you think about it, the less it makes sense. You're just kind of like, really, like, would that really happen?
Yeah.
So but I mean, overall, I think they tied it together nicely at the end. So yeah, probably like a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, and I'd probably agree. I'd thought about that as well. It's like, what would I give it? And again, I said it was a really good film. I really liked it a lot, and so I think a 7. It seems fair because I do think there are things they could have done to have made it a better film. But at the same time, I almost struggle with that because I go, but the point of the film was not the Civil War. The point of the film was the issue of how do people interact with each other and how do we live with one another.
Yeah.
And so if you back up and you say, take the Civil War aspect out of it and put some other backdrop, then it probably works even better, and I probably would give it a much higher rating. So the hang up for me is just the setting and some of the things that happen along the way where I'm going like you said, I don't know if I really buy that.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't want to leave you with the thought that, I don't know, it sounds like I might be disappointed. I kind of went into it feeling like I was going to be disappointed. I came out feeling a little bit uncertain, but the more we've talked about it afterwards, I found that I really did like it a lot. So it is one of those things that it's kind of like the initial bite might go like, oh, I don't know. I was hoping for an In-N-Out burger, but it tastes like a McDonald's burger.
Or maybe it's more like a specialty cheese or wine, and kind of takes a minute to grow on you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, like sometimes you take a drink of a wine and you go like, ooh, it's kind of got a bite to it. I don't know if I liked it, but the more you spend time with that bottle,
it's like a good Cabernet or
something. You go like, yeah, actually, I did really enjoy the experience. So yeah, I think that's all we can say about it without telling you specific plot points. But I would just encourage you to see it and really take it in and have some good conversation with whoever you go to see it with, and allow it to maybe change your thinking a little bit.
Yeah, same. And we don't know exactly what we're going to talk about on our next video, but we hope that you, as always, come back and leave a like and comment on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.